thing about men interacting with men, again, is that it isn't that they respect each other's viewpoints. That's not exactly right. What happens with a man, and I know a lot of men that I would regard as remarkably tough people for one reason or another, and everything you do with them is a form of combat. Like if you want your viewpoint taken seriously, often you have to yell them down, and like they're not going to stop talking unless you start talking over them, you know. And it's not like men are automatically giving respect to other men, because that just doesn't happen. It's that the combat is there and it's expected. So this is part of the reason why I think men are bailing out of so much of academia and maybe the academic world in general, and maybe the world in general, is that men actually don't have any idea how to compete with women. Because the problem is that if you unleash yourself completely, then you're an absolute bully. And there's no doubt about that, because if men unleash themselves on other men, that can be pretty goddamn brutal, especially for the men that are really tough. And so that just doesn't happen with women ever. But so you can't unleash yourself completely. If you win, you're a bully. If you lose, well, you're just bloody pathetic. So how the hell are you supposed to play a game like that? I've worked with lots of women in law firms in Canada, for example, and high-achieving women, like really remarkable people, I would say. And they're often nonplussed, I would say, by the attitude of the men in the law firm, because they would like to see everyone pulling together because they're all part of the same team. Whereas the men are like at each other's throats in a cooperative way, because they want the law firm to succeed, but they want to be the person who's at the top of the success hierarchy, right? So we don't really have any idea how to integrate male and female dominance hierarchies.
Exactly. That's exactly right. This is why I love this show, you know, Real Housewives, which Gloria Steinem scorns. And just last night, okay, I was watching an episode, all right, where the women were at each other, okay, at a party and all, in recounting. But I said this to you, but you said this to me, and the men got together there and said, well, this is the way they communicate, you know, with each other, and men, we men, okay, just will have a fist fight, and 10 minutes later we're going to have a beer at the bar next to each other, and so and I have observed that my entire life.
My daughter used to be really irritated about that, because she like most people was the target of feminine conspiratorial bullying at one. She's no pushover, my daughter, so it wasn't like this was a continual thing or that she didn't know what to do about it, but she had observed these girls conspiring against her and then blackening her name on Facebook, which is part and parcel of the typical female bullying routine, which is often reputation demolition, right? Yeah. That there's a good literature on that. And then she'd watch what would happen if my brother or my son would have a dispute with his friends, you know, and maybe they were drinking and there was a dispute. They'd have a fight, and then the next day they were friends again. And that's another thing that's strange, is that like men have a way of bringing a conflict to a head and resolving it, right? And that it isn't obvious to me that women have that same, perhaps you might call it a luxury, but it's also the case that men don't know what to do when they get into a conflict with a woman, because what the hell are you supposed to do, you know? Mostly what you're supposed to do is avoid it.
Well, I've seen, I don't know whether this crosses into other countries, but that there's a certain kind of taunting and teasing that boys do with each other that toughens them, okay, and where they don't take things seriously. But a girl's feelings become extremely hurt if she hears something that is very tough, you know, sarcastic against her. So I mean, I do feel that there are profound differences between the sexes in terms of emotions, in terms of communication patterns. My father used to say that he could never follow women's conversations. He said women don't even finish sentences. The women understand immediately what the other woman is saying. Okay, in the way that women tend to be more interested, or have been traditionally more interested in soap operas. It's not just that the women were home without jobs. It's that honestly, I believe that soap opera does mirror the way women talk to each other. There's these communication patterns that have been built up through women, the world of women, okay, which was, it made sense there was a division of labor, okay? It wasn't sexism against women that there was a division of labor. The men went off to hunt and did the dangerous things. The women stayed around the hearth because you had pregnant women, nursing women, older women, okay, they were cooking and so on. So I feel that these communication patterns that we're talking about have been built up, okay, over the centuries. I mean, the the men had to toughen each other, okay, to go out. You know, the hunting parties of Native Americans, you know, they could be gone for 2 weeks, and when the temperature was below zero, okay, many of them died. Okay, you know, the idea that somehow any kind of separation of the sexes or different spheres of the sexes is inherently sexist.
And inherently driven by a power dynamic.
The answer to all of this, okay, everything that we're talking about, okay, is education into early history, okay.